I always say the stage is a miracle thing with the stage. I don't know what it is. A lot of the time when you kind of go off stage, you kind of switch that switch off, and then everything's normal. And then sometimes the stage, and then the lights, and then that flow of energy. Do we have any musicians here? Anyone plays any musical instruments? A few of you. Do any performances? Any performers? Right. You guys will probably know what I'm saying. The moment you get on there, something switches on. You're in that flow of energy. Everything's like, you know what happens. Time just passes by. I'm sure that 10 minutes didn't feel like 10 minutes. It must have felt like 5 seconds or something. And everything is perfect in that flow. And there's a thing that I usually teach. And I say, master the form, and what's the end of that? We say, master the form and flow with the formless. Flow with the formless. And this is the thing that I see with a lot of spiritual people. A lot of people who are in the flow, they're like, go with the flow, go with the flow. Exactly what Alina was saying before. Just flow with the divine energies. But always remember what we said on day one. You can only flow with what you know. You can only flow with what you know. If you guys have been on flow so far, and you see the result in front of you, that is the result of the flow. That is the result of your flow right now. Because that is how the vessel is, that is how the container is, that is how the skill sets are, that is your tool belt right now. So if you continue to flow, it will most likely look very similar. The same ups, the same downs. It will look very, 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 very similar. And how can I best explain this is, for you guys who are musicians, you'll understand. For those of you who maybe you just know how to drive, you'll understand. How many of you have been driving before? You drive down a highway for around maybe 5 minutes, a few minutes, you kind of weren't there. How many of you know what I'm talking about when I say that? You're kind of like, you're driving on the highway, and then there's like a few moments you're not there. You come back and you're like, shit, I'm driving. Anybody know what I'm talking about, right? So I want you to understand this. First of all, we need to understand when we are in flow, we are at our best. You perform best when you are in flow. Think about it. How many of you had that moment again? You were driving and you didn't know you were there and you came back. How many had that moment before? Keep your hands up nice and high so I can see who you are. Okay, a lot of you. Now keep your hands up. I want to ask you this question, okay? How many of you survived that process? Keep your hands up if you survived that process. Well, thank God you survived that process. You were operating this vehicle that if maneuvered wrong, it could be extremely, extremely dangerous. You were not there. You didn't see anything. You were somewhere else, yet at the same time, you were safe and you're still alive. How is that so? How is that possible? You must have hit your brakes at some time, hit the accelerator sometime, switched lanes at some time, looked at the mirror sometime, but you didn't even know you did it. How did you manage something so profound? I don't know if you think about this. This happens daily. A lot of things you do daily you don't think about, and you ace it. There was no problem. Nothing happened. But I want you to have a think about this a second. This is what we call subconscious flow, right? This is flowing with the subconscious. What about when you're in conscious mind? How do you perform in conscious mind? When you're not subconscious flow, when you're just consciously taking action, how do you perform? Think about this. I don't know if any of you have had this before. You're a perfect driver, driving's perfectly fine, right? And then you're reversing, you say, don't hit the curb, don't hit the curb, don't hit the curb, don't hit the curb. You're consciously thinking, don't hit the curb. What do? You hit the goddamn curb. right? And you're like, how? I don't usually make those mistakes. That can't happen. I've been driving so long. How do I hit the curb? Those of you who are musicians will know what I'm talking about. It's those moments where you go up, or those people who've ever done a speech before, you go up and you're thinking about the speech, remember my lines, don't forget the lines, don't forget the lines, don't forget the lines. You come up, you forget the lines, you blank out. Like those of you musicians, exactly the same way. You say, remember the notes, remember the notes, remember the lyrics, you forget the lyrics. But for some reason, some profound experience happens when something switches on and then you're in the flow and everything is different. Time is different. Do you remember conscious experiences? If you're consciously trying to perform something and remember the lyrics, you remember every single moment of it and time drags. Sometimes you don't think about it. You know, musicians, they just go wild on that piano, they go wild on that guitar, and they're not thinking about anything, and everything comes out perfect. You nailed it. You nailed it. Time flew by. You go off stage, and you're like, man, I didn't get enough time up there. I want to experience it again. I felt like it went too fast. How many of you are following what I'm saying here, by the way? Raise your hand nice and high. Give me a yes. Let me see the yes, the expression in your face. Thanks, Tess. Thank you. Now, so the question for me, when I started understanding the stage performance, my question was always, hey, how is it that sometimes I access flow, subconscious flow? Because I know I perform best at subconscious flow. All of you do too. When you are consciously trying to do things, you don't perform your best. But the big problem is, a lot of the time, the goals you want to reach, you're trying to reach it consciously, you see? You're thinking about your goals, you're thinking about the things you need to do in your conscious mind. But that's not the thing that's getting most of your results, because what's subconsciously flowing for you is the thing that's getting your results. But you don't know what's happening in your subconscious. And so what I figured out was this, and this is when I start to see, hey, there's a lot of repeat patterns with a lot of spiritual people. They keep saying, go with the flow with the divine. The universe will only give me what I want at the right time. How many of you heard that before? They say the universe will only give you what you want at the right time, right? Let me tell you something. And then what's the result of that? So you'll make yourself, every one of you, you will end up making yourself up some bullshit excuses and say, okay, I know why it's not coming to me right now. It's because the universe doesn't feel it's the right time for me right now. Now it's correct. It's not the right time for you right now. For you, the container and the vessel that you are, is not the right time for that right now. You want to attract money, and money isn't coming your way. And then you're very, very spiritual. Although you're frustrated that money isn't coming your way, you come to this spiritual acceptance and saying that, you know, I guess the universe knows when's the right time for me. But what people don't understand is you can change your vessel. You can change your container. You can change who you are. If you change who you are, then you become a different person. Then the universe might be able to give you the tools, the powers, the manifestations that you want right now. Are you guys following what I'm saying, by the way? So you can sit back and say, hey, I might as well just lie down and just wait until the universe thinks it's the right time for me. If you did that, then maybe the right time for you is in 50 years' time, 75 years' time. Then you can be that person who's 120 years old driving the Lamborghini. Or you can say, hey, I want results now. How many of you want results now? Some of you don't. You want to wait for 120? I did too. Right? You want results now. So if you want results now, you want the manifestations now, what you got to do? You got to prepare the vessel. You got to prepare the vessel. How do we prepare the vessel? You got to master the form. You got to do the training. You got to change this this vessel that you are, you got to change your abilities, your capabilities, your container. You got to change all of this. You got to change the mindset. When you change that, it's an uncomfortable process. I want you to write that down, because it's an uncomfortable process. If you are doing something you've never done before, it's uncomfortable, right? If you're not good at something, it's going to be uncomfortable practicing it. And how does it become comfortable? You keep practicing the thing that's uncomfortable and it becomes comfortable. Once it becomes comfortable, guess what? The new form that you've mastered, you can now flow with it effortlessly. Whether it's sales, whether it's yoga, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, it doesn't matter what it is. But you've got to be prepared to put in the time to do the practice.